The call came late, as most of the bad ones do. Captain Harris's voice on the other end was clipped, urgent. "Cooper, I need you downtown. Now. Senator Holloway's daughter has been taken." The weight of those words hit hard. Victor Holloway wasn't just any senator, he was a power broker, a man with his sights set on the presidency. His daughter, Alina, was the apple of his eye, a polished, poised 17-year-old who appeared in every family campaign photo. "She was last seen leaving school," Harris said as I sped through the city. "Her driver was found unconscious near the Capitol Hill exit. No sign of her." When I arrived at the command center set up in the precinct's war room, the tension was palpable. Agents from the FBI were already conferring with local officers, and Senator Holloway sat at the center of it all, his normally commanding presence shaken to its core. "She's just a kid," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do whatever it takes to bring her back." The first lead came quickly, a video sent to Holloway's private email account. The footage was short but chilling. Alina sat in a darkened room, her hands tied to a chair. Her tear-streaked face trembled as a distorted voice spoke from off-camera. "Senator Holloway, you have 48 hours to comply. Do as we say, and your daughter lives. Fail, and she dies." "What do they want?" Holloway demanded. "Money? Legislation? What?" "No demands yet," I said. "They're waiting for you to sweat. It gives them power." Claire Bennett, our tech specialist, studied the video frame by frame. "No metadata," she said, her voice tense. "They wiped it clean. But listen, there's a faint echo in the background. This wasn't shot in a house or office. It's industrial." We reviewed Alina's routine. She had been on her way home from a private academy in Northwest D.C. Her route was straightforward, but the driver's account gave us our first clue. "I stopped at a red light," the driver said, his face pale. "And then, nothing. I woke up to flashing lights and paramedics. Forensics found traces of a tranquilizer dart embedded in the driver's seat. The attackers were efficient, professional. A gas station security camera captured Alina's car minutes before the abduction. The footage revealed a black van tailing her. The plates were fake, but Claire traced its movements using city traffic cameras. The trail ended in a derelict industrial park on the city's outskirts. Jake Morales, my partner, and I arrived at the industrial park just before dusk. The warehouse loomed like a skeleton against the orange sky, its broken windows and rusted exterior giving nothing away. Inside, the smell of mildew and oil clung to the air. At the center of the main room, we found a chair, the same one from the video. "She was here," Jake said, crouching beside it. "But they've moved her." Nearby, Claire found a burner phone discarded among debris. The device was damaged, but Claire extracted enough data to trace its last signal to a nearby motel. The motel was a dead end, mostly. The room registered under a fake name was empty, but the staff remembered a wiry man with a scar across his cheek who had checked in late the night before. "Tommy Greer," Jake muttered when the description came up. Tommy was a small-time criminal who had tangled with us before. We picked him up at his usual haunt, a grimy bar on the south side. When we confronted him, his reaction told me we were on the right track. "Look, I didn't take the girl," Tommy blurted as we hauled him into the interrogation room. I just helped move her." "Where is she now?" I demanded. "I don't know. Some guy called Reaper runs the show. He gave the orders." "Who's Reaper?" Tommy's eyes darted nervously. "I don't know. Nobody sees him. He just calls." Reaper wasn't a new name to me. He was a ghost in the criminal world, tied to black market deals and disappearances, but no one had ever pinned him down. "Red Summit," Tommy whispered, barely audible. The name sent a chill down my spine. Red Summit was more than a criminal organization, it was a network, a spiderweb of corruption that extended into politics, finance, and law enforcement. If Reaper worked for them, we were dealing with something far larger than a kidnapping. The name Red Summit changed the game. Tommy's mention of the organization wasn't just a lead, it was a threat. In the criminal world, Red Summit was whispered about in the same tone people used for untouchable legends. If they were behind Alina's kidnapping, this wasn't a straightforward case anymore. At the precinct, Claire dug into Red Summit's presence in the US. These guys aren't like your typical cartel or mafia, she said, her fingers tapping furiously on her keyboard. They're decentralized. No single base of operations, no clear leader. They're like a hydra, cut off one head, and another grows back. Focus on the Reaper lead, I said. He's tied to the kidnapping, and if he's working for Red Summit, he's our way in. Claire pulled up Tommy's burner phone records. Reapers called him twice in the last 48 hours. Both signals pinged cell towers in Baltimore. Jake frowned. Baltimore's a big place. What exactly are we looking for? Criminals like Reaper need infrastructure, Claire said. Safe houses, transport, communication hubs. I'll narrow it down. Claire's work paid off. By morning, we had a location, a shipping yard on the outskirts of Baltimore, where a network of warehouses served as a front for smuggling operations. Jake and I rolled up with a tactical team, the air tense with anticipation. As we breached the main warehouse, the stench of diesel and rotting wood hit us like a wall. The raid unfolded quickly. Most of Reaper's men surrendered without a fight, but a handful resisted. Shots rang out as we moved deeper into the complex, clearing room after room. Over here. Jake called, gesturing toward a locked office door. Inside, we found maps, burner phones, and a ledger detailing Red Summit's local operations. But more importantly, we found surveillance photos of Alina. She's still alive, I said, my jaw tightening. One of the men we captured gave us the next piece of the puzzle. Under pressure, he admitted that Alina had been moved again, to a facility outside Philadelphia. She's a bargaining chip, the man said. Reapers using her to pressure Holloway. While we prepared to move on the Philadelphia lead, Senator Holloway made his own move. During a tense meeting at the precinct, he demanded answers, and results. What have you found? He asked, his voice tight with anger. We have a location, I said, choosing my words carefully. We believe she's in Philadelphia. That's not good enough, Holloway snapped. Do you know what these people are asking of me? They want me to sign legislation that would strip federal oversight of private contractors. If I do that, I'll be handing them the keys to the kingdom. Don't give in, I said firmly. They're counting on your fear. If you fold, they'll know they can control you. Holloway's expression softened, but only slightly. If they kill her because of me. They won't, I said, though the weight of the promise settled heavily on my shoulders. The Philadelphia facility was a storage compound disguised as a trucking depot. Claire, monitoring from the precinct, guided us through the layout. This place is a fortress, she said. Surveillance cameras, motion sensors, armed guards. Reapers not taking any chances. We breached the facility under cover of darkness. The firefight that followed was chaotic, gunfire echoed off the walls, and the air filled with the acrid smell of burning rubber. As we cleared the compound, we found Alina in a small, windowless room. She was pale but unharmed, her wrists bound with zip ties. Alina, it's okay, I said, cutting her free. We've got you. Her eyes filled with tears, but she managed a weak smile. They said you wouldn't find me. With Alina safe, the immediate danger seemed to have passed, but that illusion shattered when Claire reviewed the intel we'd recovered. They're not done, she said, her voice grim. This wasn't just about Alina. Red Summit has been using her as part of a larger scheme. The files pointed to a series of coordinated attacks targeting America's financial and technological infrastructure. Claire highlighted a map with locations marked in red: New York, Chicago, San Francisco. "It's all interconnected," she said. "They're planning something massive." It was then that the name Alaric Stone appeared. "Who's Stone?" Jake asked. I clenched my jaw. "He's an enforcer. If Reaper's the brains, Stone is the muscle. And if he's involved, this just got a lot more dangerous." Stone didn't wait for us to find him. The night after Alina's rescue, I returned to my apartment to find the door slightly ajar. Inside, everything appeared untouched, except for a single playing card on the kitchen counter, the Ace of Spades. Written on it in neat, block letters was the word, "Soon." Claire confirmed what I already knew. "This is a warning. He knows you're getting close." "He's not going to scare me off," I said. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Maybe not, but he'll try to take you out. And if he's sending messages, he's already watching." The next few days were a blur of tension and breakthroughs. Claire tracked financial transactions tied to Red Summit, uncovering a pattern of payments linked to shell companies operating out of Chicago. "They're funding something big," she said. "The amounts are too large for day-to-day operations. This is infrastructure-level spending." Meanwhile, Jake and I followed up on leads that placed Stone in New York, coordinating with local law enforcement to track his movements. "He's moving between safe houses," Jake said. "Never staying in one place for more than a night." "He's setting the stage," I replied. Our confrontation with Stone came sooner than expected. Acting on a tip from an informant, we raided a warehouse in Brooklyn where Stone was believed to be operating. The moment we breached the building, it was clear we'd walked into a trap. Explosions rocked the entrance, and smoke filled the air as Stone's men opened fire. "Fall back!" Jake shouted, pulling me behind cover as bullets ricocheted off metal beams. Stone's voice rang out from somewhere in the chaos. "You're persistent, I'll give you that. But persistence only gets you so far." We barely escaped with our lives, but the warehouse fire destroyed key evidence. With every step, the stakes grew higher. Claire's analysis of the remaining intel revealed a chilling directive: activate Phoenix Protocol. "What's Phoenix Protocol?" Jake asked. Claire's face was pale. "It's their fail-safe. If their operations are compromised, they burn everything and go scorched earth. This isn't just about destabilizing infrastructure anymore, they're aiming to cripple the entire system." The final target was clear: New York City. The aftermath of the Philadelphia raid brought clarity, and chaos. With Alina safe, Senator Holloway resumed his role as a public figure, carefully navigating the fallout while cooperating with our investigation. But Red Summit's endgame loomed closer with every passing hour. Claire spent days piecing together the fragments of data recovered from the Brooklyn warehouse. "This is bigger than we thought," she said, exhaustion lining her face. "Red Summit isn't just running isolated operations. They're tied to some of the largest financial and technological systems in the country." Jake crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. "What does that mean for us?" "It means they're embedded in everything," I replied. "And if we don't stop them, they'll take down the country from the inside." The decrypted files pointed to 3 key hubs in the U.S., each serving a specific role in Red Summit's plan. 1. Chicago, a logistics center, where resources were moved and distributed. 2. Silicon Valley, a cyber operations hub responsible for malware development and digital infiltration. 3. Houston, a recruitment base targeting disaffected individuals with promises of wealth and power. Chicago's sprawling shipping yards made it an ideal location for Red Summit's logistical operations. Claire identified a warehouse near the Port of Chicago as the central hub, its activity carefully concealed behind layers of false documentation. "This place isn't just moving goods," Claire said as we prepared for the raid. They're funneling weapons, equipment, and personnel to other sites across the country. The operation was massive. SWAT teams and federal agents joined us as we breached the warehouse. The air was thick with the smell of oil and metal, and the sound of forklifts echoed through the cavernous space. Red Summit's operatives resisted fiercely, using the labyrinth of crates and machinery to their advantage. Jake and I led a team through the chaos, securing key areas while Claire remotely accessed the warehouse's surveillance system. "I've got something," Claire said over comms. "There's a secure room at the back. That's where they're coordinating." Inside the room, we found detailed shipping manifests, financial records, and a map marking Red Summit's other U.S. hubs. "This is the heart of their logistics," I said. "If we take this down, we cut off their supply chain." But before we could fully secure the warehouse, the unmistakable voice of Alaric Stone rang out over the intercom. "You've come so far," he said, his tone laced with amusement. "But you're too late." Seconds later, an explosion rocked the building. Smoke filled the air as flames erupted from the far end of the warehouse. Stone had rigged the place to self-destruct, destroying much of the evidence we'd recovered. "We need to move," Jake shouted as the fire spread. We escaped with the manifest and map, but the destruction of the hub was a painful reminder of Red Summit's willingness to sacrifice anything to maintain control. The next lead took us to Silicon Valley, where Red Summit's cyber division operated out of an unassuming office building in Palo Alto. "This is where the real damage happens," Claire said, her tone grim. "They've developed malware that can infiltrate critical infrastructure, power grids, financial systems, even military networks." Disguised as employees, Jake and I infiltrated the building while Claire monitored remotely. The office's sterile halls and brightly lit rooms masked the darkness of its true purpose. "We're in," I said into the comm as we reached the server room. The servers were state-of-the-art, their hum filling the room like a heartbeat. Claire guided us through the process of extracting the data while simultaneously planting a virus to disable their systems. "Almost there," Claire said. But before we could finish, alarms blared. Security guards swarmed the building, forcing us into a desperate firefight as we made our escape. Back at the precinct, Claire analyzed the data we'd recovered. Her expression grew darker with every passing moment. "They've already planted the malware," she said. "It's dormant now, but if they activate it, it'll cripple the entire economy." "How much time do we have?" I asked. Claire shook her head. "Not enough. We need to stop them at the source." Houston was Red Summit's base for recruitment, targeting individuals who were desperate, ambitious, or simply angry at the system. Their propaganda promised wealth, purpose, and power, but the reality was far darker. We identified a warehouse in the outskirts of the city as the recruitment hub, where operatives trained new recruits and indoctrinated them into Red Summit's ideology. The raid was swift and decisive. As we stormed the warehouse, we found dozens of recruits in various stages of training. Most surrendered immediately, their fear and confusion evident. Among them was a young woman named Riley, who provided critical insight into Red Summit's methods. "They make you feel like you're part of something bigger," she said, her voice trembling. "But once you're in, there's no way out." Riley's testimony revealed the full extent of Red Summit's plan. They weren't just targeting infrastructure, they were building an army. The pieces finally came together. With intel from Chicago, Silicon Valley, and Houston, we pinpointed Red Summit Central Command, a skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan, disguised as the headquarters of a tech startup. "This is it," Claire said, highlighting the building on the map. "The Phoenix Protocol is being coordinated from here. If we take it down, we take them down." But there was one final obstacle: Stone. "He'll be waiting for us," Jake said. "Good," I replied. "It's time to end this." The Manhattan skyscraper housing Red Summit's command center was a modern fortress. Officially, the building belonged to Summit Dynamics, a legitimate tech startup. But the files we'd recovered revealed its true purpose, the nerve center for Red Summit's operations in the U.S. Claire briefed us from the precinct as Jake and I prepared for the operation. The Phoenix protocol is tied to a series of remote triggers embedded in their systems, she explained. If they launch, the malware will wipe billions in assets, shut down infrastructure, and cripple the stock exchange. How do we stop it? I asked. Claire's expression hardened. We have to take out their mainframe and capture whoever's running the show. If we miss even one, they'll launch the attack. The tactical team moved in under cover of darkness, scaling the skyscraper from the adjacent building to avoid the heavily guarded lobby. Jake and I led the breach team through a service entrance on the 32nd floor, where Summit Dynamics' legitimate employees had left for the night. As we climbed, the atmosphere grew tense. The hum of servers and faint voices echoed through the stairwell. Keep it tight, Jake whispered as we reached the 50th floor, the heart of the operation. The floor was a hive of activity. Operatives worked at rows of monitors, the glow of screens illuminating their faces. At the center stood Elias Cade, Red Summit strategist, calmly directing the chaos. Take them quietly, I ordered. The first wave was subdued without a sound, but one operative triggered the alarm before we could reach Cade. Chaos erupted. Guards poured in from side entrances, and the once silent command center became a battlefield. Jake and I fought through the chaos, securing the exits while Claire accessed the building's internal systems to guide us. I've locked the elevators, Claire said over comms. You've got about 10 minutes before they override it. Cade, seeing the tide turn, retreated toward the secure mainframe room. We followed, fighting through the last line of guards. You're too late, Cade sneered as we cornered him. Even if you destroy this building, the Phoenix protocol is already active. Jake pinned him against the wall. Shut it down. Now. Cade smirked. It's not up to me anymore. Before we could interrogate Cade further, the unmistakable voice of Alaric Stone filled the room. You just can't leave well enough alone, can you? Stone emerged from the shadows, flanked by two heavily armed operatives. He moved with the same lethal confidence I'd seen before, his eyes cold and calculating. Let Cade go, Stone said. And maybe I'll let you walk out of here alive. You're out of moves, I said, leveling my weapon at him. Stone's smirk was razor-sharp. I'm never out of moves. The fight that followed was brutal. Stone's operatives were highly trained, their movements precise and efficient. Jake and I fought tooth and nail, but Stone proved why he was Red Summit's enforcer. His strikes were calculated, his strength overwhelming. You can't win this, he said, slamming me against a server rack. You're wrong, I shot back, managing to land a blow that knocked him off balance. As the fight raged, Claire's voice came through the comms. I've located the trigger for the Phoenix protocol. But I can't disable it remotely. You need to shut it down manually. I glanced at Jake, who was holding off one of Stone's operatives. Cover me. I sprinted to the mainframe, where the final countdown had already begun. 5 o'clock. 4:59, 4:58. The interface was complex, but Claire guided me step by step. Sweat dripped down my face as I typed in commands, each second feeling like an eternity. Almost there, Claire said. Just one more override. Stone, seeing what was happening, broke away from Jake and lunged toward me. I barely dodged his attack, his knife slicing the air inches from my throat. You're not stopping this, he snarled. I already have, I replied, slamming the final key. The system powered down, the countdown freezing at 0:03. With the Phoenix protocol disabled, the fight shifted. Stone's confidence wavered, and Jake seized the opportunity to tackle him to the ground. It's over, I said, standing over him. Stone smirked, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. You think you've won? Red Summit doesn't die. It evolves. Despite his bravado, the arrival of reinforcements marked the end of Stone's reign. He was taken into custody, though his defiant stare lingered in my mind long after the fight was over. The fallout from the operation was monumental. Red Summit's command structure in the U.S. was shattered, its operatives scattered. Elias Cade and Alaric Stone faced a mountain of charges, their capture celebrated as a major victory. But victory came at a cost. Red Summit isn't gone, Claire warned as she reviewed the final pieces of data. There are still cells out there. And with leaders like Stone, they'll rebuild faster than we can stop them. The words echoed in my mind as I stood on the precinct's rooftop that night, watching the city lights stretch into the distance. We had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Months later, life had settled into a semblance of normalcy. Senator Holloway publicly thanked law enforcement for rescuing his daughter, though the scars of the ordeal lingered. Alina began rebuilding her life, but she was no longer the carefree teenager I'd seen in family photos. Her experience had changed her, made her stronger, but also more guarded. As for me, the victory felt hollow. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Stone's smirk, heard his final words, "Red Summit doesn't die. It evolves." One night, as I locked up my office, my phone buzzed. The message was simple, but it sent a chill down my spine. "We're still watching." The room was cold, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows over the table where Alaric Stone sat, his wrists bound in steel cuffs. Across from him sat Special Agent Riley from the FBI, her gaze locked on Stone's unflinching face. "You've got nowhere left to run," Riley said, sliding a thick file across the table. "We've dismantled Red Summit's operations. Your people are scattered. It's over." Stone leaned back, his smirk cutting through the tension. "You don't understand how this works, do you? You think Red Summit is a building you can burn down. A tree you can uproot. But it's neither. It's an idea." Riley's frustration was palpable, but she pressed on. "We have Elias Cade. He's talking. We know about Spectre." Stone's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing. "Cade is a pawn. Spectre is something else entirely. And you're already too late." The news broke just hours after Riley's interrogation. A federal facility in Virginia housing key Red Summit evidence was bombed, killing 3 guards and injuring dozens. Surveillance footage revealed a drone carrying the explosive, its origin unknown. Claire called us into the precinct's war room. "This isn't a coincidence," she said, pulling up images of the explosion. "The way the blast was timed, the precision, this is Red Summit's work." Jake frowned, his arms crossed. "You think Stone's behind this?" "He's locked up." Claire nodded. "But he's still pulling strings. Look at this." She displayed intercepted messages from a private network Stone had accessed while in custody. The messages were coded but referenced someone called Spectre. "That's our new target," I said. Spectre's influence became clear over the next few days. First, Claire's apartment was broken into, her equipment destroyed. Then Jake narrowly avoided an ambush outside his gym, where 2 masked men opened fire on him before escaping into the night. The message was clear, we were now the targets. The escalation reached its peak when I found my car rigged with explosives. Claire's expertise saved my life, her quick scan of the vehicle's GPS uncovering the trap before I even turned the key. "They're coming for us," Jake said as we regrouped at a safe house. "Let them try," I replied. Claire's continued work on Stone's communications revealed a chilling development. Spectre was leading a new Red Summit initiative, a bioweapon deployment. "They're not going for infrastructure this time," Claire said, her voice tight with urgency. "They're targeting people." The weapon, a modified virus, was being developed in secret and would be dispersed using drones in major U.S. cities. The deployment was scheduled to coincide with a high-profile summit in Washington, D.C., ensuring maximum casualties and chaos. Where's the weapon being manufactured? Jake asked. Claire highlighted a location on the map, a facility hidden beneath a rural farm in Kansas. The Kansas countryside was quiet as we approached the farm, its picturesque fields belying the danger hidden below. Armed with a tactical team, we breached the barn, uncovering a hidden elevator that led to an underground lab. The lab was a sterile nightmare of steel and glass, rows of equipment humming as researchers worked on the bioweapon. The operatives guarding the lab fought fiercely, and the raid devolved into a chaotic firefight. Secure the weapon. Jake shouted, ducking behind a console as bullets flew. We managed to contain the bioweapon, neutralizing the facility's capability to manufacture more. But the cost was high, 3 agents were injured, and several Red Summit operatives escaped. One captive revealed the next piece of the puzzle. Spectres in Detroit, he said, his voice shaking. That's where it all ends. The chemical plant in Detroit was Red Summit's last stand. Spectre had turned the facility into a fortress, surrounding himself with loyal operatives and state-of-the-art defenses. Jake and I entered under cover of night, guided by Claire's remote surveillance. The plant was a maze of pipes and tanks, the air thick with the smell of chemicals. They're loading drones, Claire said over comms, her voice tense. You need to move fast. We split into 2 teams, one focused on disabling the drones while the other sought Spectre. We found Spectre in the plant's control room, surrounded by monitors displaying live feeds from around the facility. You're persistent, Spectre said, his voice calm and deliberate. But persistence won't save you. He activated a sequence on the console, and alarms blared as drones began to lift off from the plant's rooftop. Jake and I engaged Spectre and his guards in a brutal firefight, the confined space amplifying every shot and explosion. Spectre moved with calculated precision, evading our attacks while issuing commands to his operatives. You think stopping me will change anything? He said, his voice rising over the chaos. Red Summit doesn't need me. It doesn't need anyone. It's already bigger than all of us. With a final effort, we brought Spectre down, neutralizing the threat before he could escape. The drones had been disabled, but one was still armed, its autopilot guiding it toward Washington, D.C. With no time to call for backup, Jake made a decision that would haunt me forever. I've got it, he said, sprinting toward the control panel. Just get out of here. Jake, no. I shouted, but it was too late. Jake manually disabled the drone, but the explosion that followed destroyed the control room. I was thrown back by the force, my ears ringing as I struggled to process what had happened. Jake was gone. Spectre's capture marked the end of Red Summit's bioweapon plot, but the victory felt hollow. Jake's sacrifice weighed heavily on all of us, a stark reminder of the cost of our mission. Stone, still in custody, remained smug when I confronted him. One man down, he said with a smirk. How many more will you lose before this is over? I left the room without a word, his laughter echoing in my ears. In the months that followed, Red Summit's remaining cells were dismantled, their operatives scattered. But even with Spectre and Stone out of the picture, the organization's shadow lingered. One night, as I reviewed Jake's case file, my phone buzzed. The message was simple: the Phoenix always rises. Red Summit wasn't gone. They were waiting, watching, and preparing to strike again. And this time, I'd be ready. The end.